A very good evening and welcome to this week's edition of Times Exclusive, airing on Times Network. My name is Banda. Glad that you could be able to join us tonight. The program is coming to you tonight, courtesy of Rainbow Paints.
They say blood is thicker than water. Reality tells us that even family lets one down sometimes. We still have to face the harsh weather as individuals. We say Rainbow Weather Shield paint is thicker than blood. The paint endures the hottest of days, the heaviest of rains, the dustiest of seasons, and the windiest of nights. Not even the toughest molds can stand this hero of a paint. Rainbow Weather Shield, family and true friend that sees no weather. Rainbow Paints, peace of mind, part of the deal.
My guest tonight is His Excellency Ambassador David Young, American Ambassador to Malawi. Your Excellency, thank you very much for joining us and welcome to Banda.
Thanks very much, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you very much. Let's quickly talk about Ambassador Young. In few words, who is Ambassador Young?
Well, Ambassador Young is David, and so he is a child of John and Marge from Kansas City, Missouri, in the middle of America.
Okay.
He's a proud husband, a proud father of two, and I've been a diplomat for 30 years.
13 or 30?
34 years.
34 years.
And I have served the last 10 years across Africa. My wife and I have fallen in love with the wonderful continent of Africa, and we foresee that we will spend not only the rest of our diplomatic career here, but probably many, many years in our retirement too, in service and servant leadership in Southern Africa.
So if I'm getting you right, is you're considering to retire in Africa?
Yeah, well, I don't really think I'm an Energizer bunny. So I don't think I am actually going to retire very much or anytime soon.
Okay.
But I foresee myself being a lecturer, teacher, mentor to young people after I finish up being a diplomat.
And you have been to Zambia before Malawi. To tell us your experience with Zambia.
Yeah, I had a wonderful 5 years in Zambia in two stretches. Originally there from 2013 to 2016, which was during the period when Michael Sata was at the end of his time, and Edgar Lungu transitioned in to be president, and I got to know President Lungu quite well. And then I was back 2020, 2021 during the COVID period, and that was the transition from President Lungu to President to HH.
Yeah. Yeah. Why did you want to be an ambassador?
You know, I'm very proud to represent my country, the United States of America. I am a proud American. I'm not proud of everything we've ever done, but I'm proud of our principles, and I'm proud of what we stand for. And at our best, I think we stand up for universal human values, for the dignity of all people, the equality of all people. And, you know, for me as a servant leader, as a person of faith, who also happens to be a Methodist minister, I'm very, very proud that I can work for my ideals here on the African continent, working for brotherhood and sisterhood between the people of the United States and people in countries like Malawi.
I'm glad that you talked about being a Methodist minister. Yeah, let's talk about that. You are an ordained minister.
I am an ordained minister. My background is actually I studied journalism first. So I worked as a journalist.
Okay.
And then I went to seminary and I became a Methodist minister, a pastor, a preacher. And so I've actually been a minister longer than I've been a diplomat.
And you still minister today?
Yeah, I still preach sometimes. I meet with different groups. I'm very active in the church that I go to. I work with the youth some. And so I talk about the principles of my faith, which ironically I feel like I can have a foot in diplomacy and a foot in the church, because I feel like being a servant leader at work is similar to being a servant leader in faith.
Yeah, let's talk about your stay in Malawi. How would you describe your stay since you came in this great country?
You know, I've been here for a year, since last April, and we have now developed a new slogan, a new motto for the work that we do together. And I think this gets to your point, Brian.
Yeah.
Because now I want to say to your listeners, your viewers, that America di Malawi di Pachabali Kwambiri. And I think for me, I feel like maybe I'm a little bit part Malawian, because I have a real heart for this country, the warm heart of Africa. And as I've met people across the country, I've really come to have a deep feeling for Malawi, like for your cousins across the border to the west in Zambia.
Yeah.
Because my wife and I, with South Africa too, we've spent almost 7 years of our lives. So more of our life in Southern Africa than any country except the United States for my life. And most of the last 7 out of the last 10 years for us has been in Southern Africa. So we feel like we've found a home. And as Pachabali, we can work together, friends that are really as close as family.
So, Malawi or Zambia?
I get in trouble on this. So, Nsima and Shima, Chipolo Polo or the Flames, the Queens or Zambian netball. You can get in big trouble if you answer that question. So
Yeah, I know.
I tried, when I was in Nigeria, I once said something that I liked jollof rice better in Ghana. I made so many enemies in Nigeria, so I don't want to make enemies with my Zambian and Malawian brothers.
You are very passionate about fighting corruption. You even did a song also talking on corruption. But what is your stand in the fight against corruption, especially with Malawi? You think we are making significant strides?
You know, I think the fight against corruption is a fight for all Malawians. And one of the things we did recently, and I did with my good friend Suffix, who is a wonderful young activist, and he's studied economics, and he's a rapper. He's a wonderful young man who has a great future, I think, of thinking about development in addition to music. But he did a song called Mutani. And for me, the fight against corruption is Mutani. What are you going to do about it? Because it's ultimately a challenge for the whole of society. It's not just government and opposition or ACB or Financial Crimes Bureau or Ministry of Justice or DPP. The fight against corruption, this cancer in society, has to be a fight for everybody. And the question for all of us is Mutani.
Yeah, but do you think Malawi is doing enough to fight this vice?
You know, I think corruption has fought back. And I think corruption has fought back hard. And I would say...
Corruption has fought back.
Corruption has fought back.
Yeah.
And I would say there have been some positive steps in the fight against corruption institutionally, but we have a long ways to go.
What do you mean when you say corruption has fought back?
Well, I think, you know, there have been arrests of certain people. There are some beginnings of prosecutions. But when you look through the system, those prosecutions haven't really gone very far, and they haven't resulted in many convictions. And so I think for the thing about corruption, the fight against corruption, is there needs to be a deterrent impact for people who are in government or in business or in society. They need to know that, you know, if I engage in corrupt acts, there are consequences, because convictions bring deterrence. And I don't think any Malawian would say there have been a lot of convictions in the fight against corruption.
And who is to blame?
I think there are institutional challenges, and I think you can look at all the institutions that impact on this. You know, just sadly, whether going through the courts or the institutions that are focused on this, I think we just look at results, the impacts. It isn't where it needs to be, because, you know, why is fighting corruption important? You know, somebody might say, so why do we care? You know, why is it important if corruption is fought against or not? The reality, and this is an inconvenient truth that I think only a Pachabali can say, is that, you know, this beautiful, wonderful country is sadly, based on statistics, one of the 5 poorest countries in the world. And corruption pulls down this economy. It pulls down the country. it holds back. And so many people are experiencing terrible poverty, experiencing frustrations, and the economy is not working for most Malawians. And one of the main reasons is corruption is pervasive. And so we have to fight corruption. We have to reform the economy so that, and I think this is in many ways the biggest challenge. The number one challenge for Malawi today is to grow the economy, because that will lift people out of poverty and give people better jobs. Small farmers, young entrepreneurs, young people who need jobs. If we don't grow the economy, we're ultimately not going to improve health and education, the fight against corruption, strengthen democracy, and promote human dignity, promote human rights. It's all connected, but it really depends in this country. I've never learned as much about economics as I have this year in this job as ambassador, because it is the overriding issue to lift this country up to the heights that it can be.
And do you think you are also helping us enough? I know you're supporting the ACV and other sectors, but is that enough? And what can we do as a country?
In the fight against corruption?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the fight against corruption, ultimately, it's Malawians' fight. It's Malawians' challenge. It's Malawians' fight. We need all Malawians to care about this, to say to your elected leaders, we want you to crack down on corruption. We don't want to support a pervasive allowances culture that's run amok. We don't want people to be pursuing their own personal interest at the expense of the common interest, the common weal. We need to basically say, if Ubuntu is to be real, if Ubuntu is real, it means that we are. I am because we are. We have to come together in common interest. And I think, sadly, in the fight against corruption and other means, it doesn't live up to that. The United States government it works together in partnership with some key investments in different institutions under the umbrella of Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Homeland Security, different ones. And we invest in those kind of partnerships. But again, ultimately, it is Malawians' fight. It is Malawians' responsibility to take this fight against corruption and to bring it to meaningful, measurable, verifiable results.
When the Director General of the Anti-Corruption Bureau was arrested, the embassy, the American embassy, was very vocal. It issued a statement. Others were of the view that you went deep into the issue. Do you have any regrets?
No regrets at all.
No regrets at all?
No regrets at all. That was a statement of the Joseph Biden administration, that our concern about the fight against corruption is critical to our partnership here, because we want the best for every Malawian. We want the best for every person around this country. And again, if you don't fight against corruption, you're not going to lift the country up. The arrest of Martha Chizuma last December was conducted in a terrible fashion. That was not how people are arrested in this country. She was treated like a terrorist. She was arrested in the middle of the night in her pajamas. That was awful. We were very concerned about that. I made lots of private phone calls. We saw how things rolled out the next couple months, and she was interdicted, I believe the phrase was, right, from her job, and very, very strong concerns. This fight against corruption is not about one person. It's not about the ACB director by herself, but that was a symbol. It was an indicator of corruption fighting back, and it was very sad. So we have no regrets about that statement. Again, I would say to your listeners, and people have talked to me about this when I say we are Pachabali.
Yeah.
Some people say, oh, Pachabali, you can never say anything about us if you're Pachabali.
Yeah.
That's not what I understand brothers and sisters are like in my country.
Yeah.
When you're a brother or sister, I can say to you, Brian, so I love you, brother, but hey, I think we're going off the deep end here. Mm-hmm. We can agree on 95% of the issues, but on this one, I really need to share with humility. I need to share my concern about where you're going. Because I think if we're going to genuinely have an honest partnership, we need to be honest with each other. And that's where that statement came from an honest friend. You can get people who won't say anything to you, and they might do stuff under the table. They might do all kinds of other things that undermine your country. I think an honest statement between friends of saying we have concerns about things are important. I've heard from diplomats of other countries who said to us during the Iraq War, we don't agree with you. We don't think this is right. People criticized the United States generations ago when we had the Jim Crow system of segregation. That was important. Century and a half ago, when we had the system of slavery in the United States, our good friends from different countries criticized that. That's what you do when things are wrong, when they're off kilter and you're not living up to your ideals. So that doesn't mean you're not friends. It doesn't mean that you're not Pachabali. In fact, if you care for someone, you will be honest with them.
Do you think the executive arm of government is doing enough to get rid of corruption?
I think that when you look at where corruption is, and there's 3 branches of government. So let me say it this way. Executive, judicial, legislative. I think we look at our institutions in this country, and collectively, we aren't where we need to be. Okay, if that's Team Malawi. Team Malawi isn't where it needs to be.
Yeah, but I want you to come very clearly. I asked about the executive. You think the executive is doing enough?
My answer to your question is putting together executive, judicial, and legislative. I don't think the system is producing the results we need.
Okay,
that's my answer.
Yeah, what is the results that you need?
Well, I mean, it's not even what I need. It's what Malawi needs, what your viewers need. You need a system that doesn't have such pervasive corruption because it holds back your economy. It holds back development. People are doing sweetheart deals. They're bribes going back and forth. People are bribing. You have to pay to play. You have to pay to meet with somebody in government sometimes. I mean, those kind of things. You pay allowances to people who don't need the allowances. People don't report their expenses right. Those kind of things just drain money from a poor country. It's like the money's going between your fingertips. And that holds back the development. So it's ultimately not about what I think as American ambassador. You're a citizen of this country. It hurts your interests. It hurts your children. It hurts your children's children, the next generations. That's why fighting corruption is important. It's for Malawians. It's not for Americans.
Let's talk about the economy. We seem to be struggling economy. We don't actually have forex to buy essentials like fuel. What do you think should be done to get the country out of this mess that we have?
There's a lot of steps that need to happen. It's frankly, it's fairly involved economic policy. So we'll talk a little bit about it perhaps for a few minutes, but it really takes a comprehensive approach that's several things together. One of the things why you don't have Forex is exports from Malawi are now 50% of what they were 10 years ago. Think of that. Your exports are half what they used to be 10 years ago. That's because tobacco usage and smoking has declined. Mining revenue has gone to like virtually nothing. And the other parts of the economy that are growing, like the small, new crops like groundnuts and mangoes and soy and macadamias, those are growing, but growing slowly. But the big ones have declined dramatically. What I think we need is an economic policies that support the growth of these new sectors of the economy. We need to revive mining. We need to boost tourism. We need to grow, make it able for the exporters to export more groundnuts, more soy, more macadamias. That will generate foreign exchange when those transactions happen through the formal economy. One thing that's happening, and I know His Excellency and others, President and others have started to do some important steps on this, is there's a big problem of smuggling. There's a huge amount of money, and Minister of Finance, the Minister of Finance just said that there may be $700 million of goods that get smuggled across the border that don't go through the formal economy. So you're not getting tax revenue. They're not being regulated. It happens in the informal economy. Now, one of the reasons, and this may be controversial for some of your viewers, but one of the reasons that happens, one of the reasons it's very important is there are 2 exchange rates in this country. The unofficial exchange rate is 1,500 or 1,600 kwacha to the dollar.
Yeah.
The official exchange rate is 10.23, 10.35.
Yeah.
And that disparity, that difference of 500-600 kwacha there,
Yeah.
people are making money off of that. But they're making money outside the system. So you're not getting tax revenue, you're not getting formal, money coming through the economy, through your banks, through the government. It's not regulated. That's a huge drain on the economy. So this is where I'm going with this. Eventually, you're going to have to realign and bring those exchange rates together.
Yeah.
Now, some people get very worried. Oh my gosh, if you devalue the kwacha, what's going to happen? It might be bad. The bottom line, the current situation, it's not good. People are getting poorer and poorer and poorer and poorer. The current situation is preventing your exports legally through the system, because you see it, and the people in the government have been talking about this. There are trucks and trucks and trucks and trucks going across your border that aren't regulated, that have soybeans, macadamias. They're coming back and forth. They're taking sugar, coming back with maize and barter, and there's foreign exchange exchanged at a higher percentage by the informal traders, the exchange people. But that's not regulated by the government.
Yeah.
That's a big problem. But you're going to have to address these big macroeconomic factors, the exchange rate, in order to support business-led growth. And that's you got to grow this economy. Like I said, the first thing, if you don't grow this economy, people are never going to get out of poverty.
So on the real value of the dollar, you think the government should devalue the kwacha further?
It needs to be eventually realigned between the different exchange rates.
What is what is realigning?
Well, I mean, when you have one exchange rate that's 1,600 and one is 1,000, they need to come together. Now, what you need to do, and governments understandably concerned about this, you need to have enough foreign exchange, you need to have enough hard currency in the system to cushion that shock, to cushion that readjustment.
So my specific question is devaluing the kwacha further a solution?
It's part of a bigger equation with border security, business proposals that are, regulations that promote trade and investment, and addressing the currency imbalance. They have to go together. If you do one in isolation, it'll not be good, but it's part of a comprehensive realignment of the economy that's very, very important. There's not one single thing you can do, but it's one of 3 or 4 big things that do need to happen.
Well, what about those who might say, but America is equally to blame? You used to do budgetary support. It's no longer there. You are helping the country through other agencies. Do you take the blame?
No way. I don't take that blame. The United States gives 350 billion kwacha every single year. One of the biggest Pachabali things we do is there are almost 1 million Malawians, and there are people watching this show who are HIV positive, and they are alive. It's 950,000 Malawians, almost 1 out of every 20 Malawians helps get antiretroviral drugs to stay alive with HIV. They don't get AIDS, they live lives of dignity because we in partnership work together. And this happens through the PEPFAR program, the U.S. President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, the Global Fund, which the international community joins in, to provide these antiretroviral daily drugs that keep HIV people alive every single day. If you think about what makes a true friend, think about it. If 1 out of every 20 Malawians is benefiting from a program to keep them alive, what's more Pachabali than that?
Yeah, but I'm talking of budgetary support.
There are challenges with budgetary support.
What are the challenges?
Cashgate and its legacy.
Okay.
We still have those problems. We still have challenges that if money goes directly to government, we have to be concerned about how that money is going to be used. We need to verify, according to our laws, that every dollar we send is used well. And there's a historical legacy of why we moved away from budgetary support for some very important reasons that you know very well, Brian. The historical, misallocation and misuse of funds. And so what we do in this PEPFAR program, the HIV program throughout the world, throughout the continent, We work with partners to make sure we can verify the results. Let me give you a quick stat. Just hold on for 1 second. I know you want to have a question.
Yeah.
Think about this. And this is an unbelievable statistic. I really want I know statistics are not always popular, but in the year 2004, the lifespan of a Malawian citizen was 43 years in the depths of the AIDS crisis.
Yeah.
43 years. 20 years later, with the work of PEPFAR and partnership of Malawi and America, the Global Fund, it has risen to 62 years. A child today is likely to live almost 20 years more because of the work we've done to fight HIV/AIDS. That's unbelievable.
Yeah,
and you hear what I said.
I understand, but my interest is on budgetary support.
We don't give budgetary support right now
because you don't trust the Malawi government.
We want to make sure the money is used as best possible and the results are the best
So
possible.
the question is, you don't trust the Malawi government with your own money?
I wouldn't say that, but I'm saying the best use of our funds through PEPFAR, which is $200+ million, is working directly with partners and directly with the Malawian government, Ministry of Health and others, to make sure the money is used the best possible. Because we want results. Okay. We just don't want to make a happy talk on.
So what are your reservations with Malawi government that you cannot give them direct?
We stopped some of our budget support after Cashgate.
And is there anything that the Malawi government can do to win back the budgetary support?
We give some small bits of budgetary support. We give some small bits. Like the World Bank has organized the Multi-Donor Trust Fund.
Yeah.
That is budgetary support. We give money through that. We do some G2G, government-to-government direct work with the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education officials in 2 districts. And so there are some efforts of budgetary support.
But it is Cashgate that pushed you back.
Well, yeah, and also the legacy of Cashgate, because some of those same problems of public financial management are still there, and there are steps being taken, but those steps had caused the Cashgate and its legacy caused many governments, caused many governments to pull back from budgetary support. So if you ask my colleagues from a lot of other countries, they're going to say, our hands got burned by direct budgetary support because then the money
So when the
haywire.
call for Saigon Freddy support came, you didn't give your money direct to the Malawi government.
Yeah, we worked through partners. That's correct.
Why?
We wanted to make sure it was used the most effective way possible. We have partners in place and this is a key factor, Brian, that we could get the money faster here. We basically provided money for 2 helicopters to get out and airlift support and people and supplies.
Yeah, but the Malawi government was asking for help, and you decided to send your help through partners, not direct to Malawi government.
We gave help in the fastest way possible because we have procurement rules, and when we have a partnership with a Catholic Relief Services, with CARE or another organization, we can do it quicker than it takes.
Why didn't you give it to Dodma?
Well, we basically, I went to Dodma's headquarters. We were giving money as fast as possible through World Food Program that went to the helicopters that coordinated with World Food Program with Dodma. So it was right there. It was connected.
Yeah, but why not direct to Malawi government?
Because it takes longer. It takes longer to do that. And back to the point about the legacy of Cashgate, we work through partners that can be the quickest and most effective. It was cheaper. It was cheaper to be able to give money to WFP for them to procure, World Food Program, to procure one of their helicopters out of the region to get it here quickly so it could get as fast as possible out to the Chikwawa and other areas, Malanje, that needed to get that assistance quick. And we have to do it in the way that we can do it as quick as possible. Like some of your neighbors next door, your wonderful Zambian cousins and friends, they just send a helicopter right over the border.
Yeah.
But the United States government, our helicopters aren't flyable from America to Malawi. So we have to work through partners here that can get the helicopters as quick as possible. We helped bring 2 World Food Program helicopters here to help.
Ambassador Young, we'll take a short break and we'll continue our conversation thereafter. Quite an interesting discussion we're having tonight. So we'll take a short break. We'll be back in a moment.
Thanks, Brian.
Well, if you're just joining us, this is Times Exclusive, airing on Times Network. I'm joined by His Excellency Ambassador David Young, American Ambassador to Malawi. We'll take a short break. We'll be back with you in a moment.
How often do you wash your favorite clothes? 52 times a year? How long do you wear them before they fade away? 3, 4 years? Imagine a paint with washability capabilities of up to 10,000 scrubs during its life. Imagine a paint that maintains its luster for over 7 years. Imagine a paint with a velvet finish and water resistance. Stop imagining, because Rainbow Acrylic Sheen does it all and beyond. An all-time hero for interior and exterior finishing that brings smiles to thousands of families and contractors. Rainbow Paints. Peace of mind. Part of the deal.
If you're just joining us, welcome aboard. My name is Brian Banda. I'm joined by His Excellency Ambassador David Young, the American Ambassador to Malawi. Welcome back to the other half of the program.
Wonderful to be here with you, Brian, and thank you for the great questions and thank you for the great conversation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's continuing with our questions on the economy. So Cashgate did a great disservice to Malawians. Will IMF and World Bank come back?
You know, I have probably not pushed harder on any issue since I touched down here last April, other than trying to get Malawi to an IMF agreement.
Yeah.
And we're getting closer and closer and closer. There was a really good visit of the chief of delegation from the IMF in Washington, D.C., who just came out. And of course, the IMF is separate than the American government.
Yeah.
You know, the IMF is the IMF, which we all belong to.
Yeah.
But Mika had a good visit and made some really good progress. So I am hopeful that in maybe 4 or 5 months, we can actually get to that elusive IMF agreement, which is so important. And the thing that IMF agreement is so important is it will bring further World Bank funding through a DPO and can allow the economy to adjust so that you can help create that trade and investment, that business investment that'll help the economy grow. So it's not important independent of itself, but when you put it with a World Bank agreement, which brings more money, then you can do your currency realignment, and then you can increase more in trade and investment. It's a package, but it goes together, and it's like an important first step.
They also have concerns with the Malawi government, and what are their concerns?
Yeah, there's kind of 3 big tracks, and I think if you read their statements, you can get a sense of this. One is the debt sustainability. You have to basically be able to show you can pay your loans, pay back your debts.
Yeah.
Because the debt is spiraling out of control and is dragging down the economy. So debt sustainability is one. Another key area is public financial management, like the IFMIS system, which has to do with how the budget is controlled and preventing like Cashgate kinds of things. Because, you know, those kind of problems with corruption and mismanagement means the money is not going to what it's supposed to go to. So you're losing your tax money is not being used as well as it can if it's not being publicly financially managed. The other thing has to do with the budgetary situation and making sure so that you can pay back your debts, you keep the balance of your budget in line, you know, to keep to your budget that you've passed and that you've supported. So those 3 tracks, but in each of those 3 tracks, Malawi's made really good progress. So I'm hopeful, I'm an optimist, and I'm really hopeful in 4 or 5 months, we'll have that IMF agreement, get the World Bank funding, and it can help lift the economy. I'm really, really hoping that's going to happen.
The American government is sometimes accused of interfering in state matters, especially in Africa. What brings me to that question is that there are conventions like the Vienna one. Do you think you sometimes go overboard in putting your case as a government?
You know, I mean, obviously, I think that the approach we take is a helpful case. I talk about America di Malawi di Pachabali. I think we're like closest family.
Yeah.
You know, somebody could say, look at the countries that don't interfere. None of them is doing a PEPFAR program. So is our intervention to keep a million Malawians alive interference in your government? One senior official in your government, I won't name who he is, has told me, boy, your interference is really good. It keeps our people alive. You know, that's a senior official who's at a very prominent position who thinks that our involvement, our activism is beautiful. It's wonderful. We are your strongest ally. No disrespect to my other friends. We are your strongest ally to get an IMF agreement. We're the strongest ally that's pushing for more World Bank funding. Our World Bank partners, your World Bank country team here is doing amazing work to help this country. You ought to give them medals. But we are pushing hard to get them to lean in and engage. All of those things, those are massive things. And then we, the government of the Biden administration makes a statement. I do a couple of interviews. I talk about corruption. And people say, oh my gosh, Ambassador David doesn't love us. He's interfering in our affairs. Well, look at the other governments that don't interfere in your affairs. Do they bring what we bring? I really think that's Pachabali.
You're confirming that sometimes you interfere?
No. I would use a different word. I think we're activists.
What's the word?
Engaged. I think we engage as partners. Pachabali, that's my word.
Yeah, because others have said that we are a sovereign state. So you should
are.
let us govern ourselves the way we should.
Of course you are a sovereign state. Every country in this world is a sovereign state, you know. You're a sovereign state. You have the right to do things. If you didn't want us to do the PEPFAR program, you could say, stop doing the PEPFAR program. You want to do that? I don't think so. 1 million people survive based on those medicines. But you could say, hey, we're a sovereign state. Let us manage our health system on our own with no help. I mean, I think that is the greatest legacy of President George W. Bush, who I disagreed with a number of his policies. But his greatest legacy is our HIV/AIDS program of PEPFAR. And that, some people would say, that activism, that advocacy, that partnership, that friendship, some people would say that's interference. Boy, if you call that interference, I have a different definition of interference than people.
Another classic example of interference is your thoughts on how the country is handling refugees. Do you think we could have done better?
I think that, we talked earlier.
Because you were very vocal on that, and people thought that was interference.
Yeah. Well, let me make a little bit of a link here for your viewers, because I think it's important to understand. Sometimes when people talk about refugees, they actually mean economic migrants. And sometimes when they talk about economic migrants, they actually mean smuggling. And smuggling is illegal. It's something that needs to be cracked down on. But treatment of refugees is different than treating of smugglers. Now, smugglers and refugees might be from the same foreign country. Let's just say, people talk about Burundians a lot. Well, we have 10, 15,000 Burundians who are refugees. Some of them live out in communities. Rounding them up with their kids and putting them in Malawi prison, I don't think that's helpful. But if somebody is Burundian, but he's illegally smuggling trucks and trucks and trucks over your borders, that's a whole other problem. You have to deal with that problem, but don't blame the poor family that has little kids. I mean, that's like, it's like, here, I'm your partner. I'm trying to help people identify that there's differences between refugees and smugglers. You need to fight smugglers. You don't need to combat refugees. That's my friendly comment.
So how should Malawi deal with this problem?
I think, which problem? The smugglers or
the
refugees?
the refugee one.
So the refugees, you have wonderful partners. The United Nations, UNHCR, which is the High Commissioner for Refugees, they have a wonderful office here. There's a wonderful country director, head of the UN assistant, resident coordinator. They are wanting to work on behalf of the whole international community with you on management, processing of your refugees. One of the things that is a terrible challenge is that your refugee camp, Zuleika, that's here in the country, was built to house 12,000 people. Now it has 56,000 people. And there's discussions of bringing these 8,000 refugees who are out in communities, bringing them to Zuleika. That's going to make 64. Brian, You and me and any of your viewers, none of them wants their families to live in the conditions that people live in. It's like, I've been there 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
You know, it's not good conditions. And making it more crowded and bringing children in who don't have a good opportunity for school. They might be going to a school in a community and paying taxes. I mean, it's misguided to address a smuggling economic migrant problem by focusing on a small group of refugees who aren't harming people in Malawi. So see, that's the important thing I would hope your viewers can think about. Smuggling, bad. Refugees, support for refugees, good.
Let's talk about another controversial issue, and I want to ask you, one as a diplomat, but also as an ordained minister. The issue of same-sex marriages has resurfaced in this country. The American government has its concerns with what has happened in Uganda. Uganda is asking for a death sentence. President Kagame has just signed it.
Museveni.
Yeah, President Museveni has just signed it this week. I wanted to get your views as an American ambassador to Malawi on this issue.
You know, Brian, my views as an American ambassador and as a Christian minister, on this one, they are the same. And that's good for my heart and my head. But what I believe is that from my faith as a minister of the gospel and as a person of faith who's a devout Christian, I am told from Scripture to do 2 things. And I'm told those 2 things: to live a holy life and also to inherit eternal life. That's what Jesus said. He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. And what I think is loving your neighbor as you love yourself means loving people who are different than you. They could be refugees, they could be migrants, they could be people with disabilities, they can be people who had leprosy in Jesus' time, and they can be people who come from minority groups. We need to love our neighbors. If you disagree with how people live their lives, you can preach on it, you can teach on it, you can talk about it, but let's do it in a loving spirit. I think the spirit of this Ugandan law, it's not loving, Love God, love your neighbors. The last thing I'd say, and this might be a little spicy for our next conversation, if you look in the Leviticus in the Bible, it calls for the death penalty for anybody who commits adultery. A man or a woman who has sexual relations outside of a married relationship, they call for stoning and death. I don't think that's the loving heart of the warm heart of Africa we want to see, is to pursue those kind of policies. I think loving your neighbor, if you love your neighbor, you raise concerns as Pachabali, that you don't hate your neighbor. And I think these kind of draconian policies that have popped up in Uganda, it pains my heart, because I don't think it's welcoming to people who are different. I don't think it's welcoming similarly to refugees, and I think we need to love our neighbors.
The American government is threatening Uganda with sanctions over the death penalty. In the Arab world, they also have stiffer penalties. We haven't heard of any sanctions. Is that fair? Are you doing this because this is an African country?
No, we're not doing it because it's an African country. That's not the reason. I think that, this law is a very concerning law because of the death penalty and the discrimination under the law. Again, I think where we can find common ground, Brian, and I think people of good faith can find common ground, is love God, love your neighbors, let's come together.
Talking of sanctions, President Chakwera is rooting for Zimbabwe. He has said it publicly that he wants the sanctions lifted on Zimbabwe. Do you think those sanctions will be lifted for Zimbabwe?
The sanctions that are actually in place, sometimes there's some confusion about it. The sanctions are actually applied to senior officials in government who've practiced corrupt acts and have undermined democracy. So it's not to the Zimbabwean people, it's to certain individuals in government positions who've misused their office. So it's not against the average Zimbabwean citizen, and sometimes people think that, but it's targeted to very specific individuals.
Do you think the same targeted sanctions would apply one day for Malawi, especially when you talk about corruption?
Well, Malawi is a democracy. It's a thriving democracy with regular party elections to transfer power from one party to another. So it's very, very, very different than Zimbabwe. And our relations with Malawi are very different than our relations with Zimbabwe. We do have provisions. Hey, let me give you an example.
Yeah.
We have provisions with the United Kingdom, with Britain, where certain individuals who are British citizens, can be subject to, different kind of targeted sanctions against an individual.
Yeah.
That happens sometimes. So, and nobody's going to say that the United Kingdom we don't have good relations with, right? So we have excellent relations with the UK. We have excellent relations with Malawi.
Has there been a time that the American government had thought of targeted sanctions on individuals in Malawi?
I can't answer a hypothetical. Let's leave it at that.
Okay, I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there. Let's talk about agriculture subsidies. We have been practicing subsidies for some time, and others have said that we're just wasting money. What is the American government view on subsidies?
Yeah, I think kind of sadly, AIP has a really good intent. But if you go out and talk to a lot of Malawian farmers and people at rural communities, you're going to find out it's actually not accomplishing what it's really intended to accomplish. And so the Minister of Agriculture and others have been working to reduce the AIP, the reach of it and the budget impact, because it really is providing a huge drain on the budget. What we actually believe, and the World Bank is a real leader on this, again, you're really good allies and friends, the World Bank, they're actually believing that it's better to kind of shift away from a mass subsidy program for everybody and have more targeted inputs that help the poorest of the poor. Cash payments or, budget, kind of help to individuals who are poor farmers. And that's where you're going to help impact the poverty, but you're not going to have the big drain on the budget that prevents investments in education and health and other things, because you're spending so much on agricultural subsidies. But again, I think the Malawian government is very well aware of this, and Sam Kwale, I think a minister, has done a good job on this moving forward, and so I think there's some really good movement in this direction.
Most Americans, they come here and probably get their visa at the airport. But it is sometimes extremely difficult for Malawians to get the American visa. You have been talking of Malawi and America being pachibale.
Yeah.
Is pachibale being reflected in how we are exchanging visas?
Well, I have to be honest, Brian.
Yes.
We have we have relations with 190, 200 countries around the world.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, and your viewers would have to decide this, a lot of people want to immigrate to the United States. And if we let everybody get a visa who tried to come to the United States, our population would probably be 500 million by a year from now.
Yeah.
Because we have so many people who want to leave challenging economic situations. Some countries, much more than Malawi, in Latin America, for example, or even Asia, have huge percentage of the population who says in a form they want to immigrate to the United States.
Yeah.
So, part of the challenge is that we have to, regulate our borders. And so there's a provision in U.S. visa law, which is the most important one. And when people have a challenge and aren't able to get a visa to travel to the United States for tourism, it's usually this one provision. So it's really important to hear this. People need to show, there's the presumption on the person applying for the visa, that they show that they have strong ties to their country to verify that they'll go for a short visit and come back.
Yeah.
Because we have and I won't name the countries, but we have other countries in Latin America and Asia where people go and they never come back.
Yeah.
And they work illegally, and they become Uber drivers, and they work as waiters, and then they, apply. So it's, for the United States to regularize its borders, that people have to basically comply with that one provision. That's the toughest provision. It's not whether you're a terrorist or anything like that. That's not very common.
Yeah.
The most common thing is, will you show you will come back?
Yeah.
And people, when they don't come back, like we have good record keeping, we have our computer systems which show, okay, these people, like these young people don't come back, And so then the sad reality is that then people who apply from those same groups, you might say, well, let's see, a 22-year-old young man who isn't employed, doesn't have a job, who wants a visa, is he going to come back? And it makes it hard sometimes. It pains me, I'll be honest, because sometimes the visa process is hard. I understand that. I'm a big believer in immigration, and I think the United States is stronger because we have people from 200 countries that come together in our melting pot. So you will find that among Americans, I'm one of the most supportive of immigration. Among that, it's my Pachabali nature. But it's honest, The other thing is that sometimes people will ask questions about, like, why are our visas shorter? Maybe they used to be 5 years and now they're 6 months or something. What happens is that we have agreements with countries around the world of how we reciprocally treat each other.
Okay.
And so when Americans apply for a visa and they get a visa for 3 months, one entry, then that puts a presumption that the United States will issue 3 months, one entry. So there's different categories that affects. I must confess, Brian, I'm not an expert in this, I won't be able to do good follow-up questions, but those are the general principles.
Very lastly, what do you think of our democracy? Are we making headway?
I think Malawi has a strong democracy. I think it's, we recognized in the Summit for Democracy that just happened that Malawi is a strong democracy. You have challenges in your democracy, but goodness knows, the oldest continuous democracy in the world right now, the United States, has a lot of problems with our democracy. We just went through one of the toughest periods in our modern history with the invasion of the United States Capitol. If you want to criticize me on something about my country, talk about January 6th, and I'll say, Brian, amen. We have some problems. We have some challenges. So, I think that countries that are democracies, citizens in democracies, have to fight to preserve those freedoms, preserve democracy, and fight against corruption, support human rights for all people, support majority rule, minority rights. Those are fundamental premises. Freedom of the press, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. We have to work hard to preserve those freedoms, because if we don't, we could lose what we have. And I think Malawi's democracy is strong. I think America's democracy is fundamentally strong, but we both have challenges.
On a lighter note, Your Excellency, there are others that believe that sometimes you are breaking the diplomatic code.
I know where you're going.
I haven't finished yet. There are others that think that you're breaking the diplomatic code. Sometimes you need to carry yourself as a diplomat, but you have been found eating mewa, mandasi, and you associate yourself with musicians, sometimes in very comfortable places.
Jingle bells, jingle bells.
What is happening with you? What is happening with Ambassador Young? You're all over the place.
Brian,
yes.
For 1 hour, you've grilled me with tough questions about the IMF and corruption and democracy and agricultural subsidies and Pachabali and friendship.
Yeah.
Whew, that's heavy stuff, man.
I know.
You gotta let me eat some mandasi. I wanted to bring this man mandasi or mbewa on a stick, and I forgot to. I said
so you eat mbewa?
Okay. Mm-hmm. My good friend Tana, one of your friends, he's not a diplomat. If Tana's watching, he's Mr. Broken English. I'm Mr. Broken Chichewa.
Yes.
But last November, Tana and I made mbewa lasagna and mbewa quiche.
Yeah.
And I ate it.
So what are you up to? you seem to be doing almost everything.
Okay, next week, on June the 8th, I'll give your viewers a teaser. June 8th, we are unveiling a new song, which is about our PEPFAR program.
Okay.
So it's a serious song about fighting HIV/AIDS, but it is, you mark my words, it's going to be one of the most popular songs in Malawi, because it has these people singing together. Skefa, Sanji, Tegrin, Suffix, Paul Kachala, Praise Umwali, Esther Lewis, and Maggie Kadrum. And there's an American rapper who sings 4 words.
And that's you. So you are a musician, an ordained minister, a diplomat. What else we haven't discovered yet?
Well, I'm a comedian, don't you think?
I want you to look at that camera. There are Malawians watching us tonight. What would be your parting thought for tonight? What message? This is the American government speaking. What message do you have for Malawians watching us tonight?
Dasingalala Kwambiri, America di Malawi di Pachabali, Kwambiri, Zona, Ambuye Kurlitseni, Zikomo Kwambiri, Tionana.
Ambassador David Young, quite interesting hearing you talk tonight. We want to thank you for coming to Times Studios and spending an hour in this conversation.
And thank you for being a great journalist, Brian. We appreciate the Fourth Estate has to be a foundation for a democracy, and you're a great journalist, and you ask super tough questions. So you have to think about it. I'm going to bring him Mandasi next time he asks tough questions.
Ambassador Young, we have been profoundly honored to have you tonight in this edition of Times Exclusive.
Thanks, Brian.
Well, on that note, we conclude this week's edition of Times Exclusive here at Times Television. In this edition, I was honored to have His Excellency Ambassador David Young, the American ambassador to Malawi. My name is Brian Banda. From all of us here at Times headquarters in Blantyre, wishing you the very best of the weekend and goodbye.